Good day, everyone. Hope you are all doing fine because today we're about to present to you The Ring of Gyges by Plato in his book The Republic, Book 2. Before we begin, let's have some guide questions that we will answer at the end of this discussion. First, what is justice or injustice based on Glaucon? Second, what it means to be just and unjust. And third, what are the three kinds of good by Glaucon? We all know that Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato are just simply Greek philosophers. But what are the other things you know about them? So, here's a letter to all of you. Dear young philosophers, today is the day that you will get to know more about us. Sincerely, your Greek philosophers. So, let's start. First, we have Plato. Is an ancient Greek philosopher, a student of Socrates, and a teacher of Aristotle. Founded an academy in 385 BCE, and he contributed to numerous philosophical theories and discussion. Next to it is Glaucon. Glaucon may not be familiar to all of you, but he is a brother of Plato and Antiphon. He is also the main speaker of Plato's Republic, and he is a proponent of the concept egoism. Egoism means a view thought by Antiphon, a sophistic contemporary of Socrates. Egoistic theories are founded on the belief that everyone acts only from the motive of self-esteem. Then we have the teacher, Socrates, an ancient Greek philosopher whose way of life, character, and thought exerted a profound influence in philosophy. Socrates himself didn't write anything. Instead, he is depicted in conversation in compositions by a small group of his admirers, which are Xenophon and Plato. Then we have Adeimantus. He is a brother of Plato and Glaucon.
And now we came to the central question that what is justice that dwells into the philosophical nature of politics, justice, and government. Here is the dialogue between Socrates and Glaucon and later on Adeimantus. Socrates believed that he has responded to Thrasymachus' discussion, which is justice is the advantage of the stronger, but the others are not satisfied with the conclusion they have reached. Glaucon, one of Socrates' young companions, explained the three kinds of good. First is good that is for yourself alone, not less of the result. Good that is values for yourself and the result that comes with it. Good that is for the result but burdensome for oneself. According to Glaucon, the origin of justice, they say that to do injustices by nature is good. To suffer injustice is evil, but that the evil is greater than the good. And so, when men have both done and suffered injustice and have experience of both, not being able to avoid the one and maintain the other, they think that they had better agree among themselves to have neither. Hence, there arise laws and mutual covenants, and that which is ordained by the law is termed by them lawful and just. So here is some justice based on Glaucon. It is an agreement between two people who are too weak to do injustice. It is a mean or compromise between the best of all, which is to do injustice and not be punished, and the worst of all, which is to suffer injustice without the power of retaliation. Also is to be tolerated not as a good, but as the lesser evil, and by the reason of the inability to man to do injustice. When the discussion is still running, Glaucon asked some question to Socrates, and is one of the example. Given both the just and the unjust a power to do what they will, where will desire lead them? And then to strengthen his point, he told us the story of the ring of the Gyges.
Now, let's begin the story of the Ring of Gyges. This story was developed between the conversations of these Greek philosophers, specifically by Glaucon. The story starts with a shepherd under the service of the king of Lydia, whose name is Gyges. And there came a storm and an earthquake. creating a chasm or an opening in the ground where he was feeding his flock. Then, in that opening, there came to be a view that captivates his eyes. Then he went inside into it. When he descended into that opening, the first thing he saw was a hollow bronze horse, and next to it is a human skeleton having nothing but a gold ring in its finger. So, without a doubt, he took it and went back to his flock. Now the shepherds met together, according to custom, that they might send their monthly report about the flocks to the king. Into their assembly he came to be having the ring on his finger, and as he was sitting there, he chanced to turn the collet of the ring inside his finger, when he instantly became invisible to the rest of the company, and they began to speak as if he were no longer present. He was astonished at this, and again touching the ring, he turned the collet outwards and reappeared. He made several trials of the ring, and always with the same result. When he turned the collet inwards, he became invisible. When outwards, he reappeared. Then he went to the kingdom, and pretended to be the messenger of the court. As he arrived, he then seduced the queen, and eventually he killed the king and took over the kingdom. All this happens because of that gold ring.
Suppose now that there were two such magic rings, and the just put on one of them, and the unjust to other. What do you think would their actions be? Try to question yourself. Put yourself on the place. What will be your actions? Will you just remain just or unjust, or use the power to gain justice or to gain injustice? In a case of a just and unjust person, what would they do if they have complete freedom of action to act exactly as they like with no consequences for their reputation? Here we have some text from the readings. Says, two extremes, let the unjust man be entirely unjust, and the just man entirely just. Nothing is to be taken away from either of them, and both are to be perfectly furnished for the work of their respective lives. Another one, therefore I say that in the perfectly unjust man, we must assume the most perfect injustice. There is to be no deduction, but we must allow him, while doing the most unjust acts, to have acquired the greatest reputation for justice. It says, for the example, we let the unjust to do his will and receive the greatest gift without being seen. The praises is with him. And when the unjust changed, he also received the biggest praises because he changed. Furthermore, we can say that it's the own interest to be praised.
As Aeschylus says, there must be no seeming, for if he seem to be just, he will be honored and rewarded, and then we shall not know whether he is just for the sake of justice or for the sake of honors and rewards. This means that if a person acts justly, we may never know his motive if he acts based on justice or based on self-interest. Therefore, let him be clothed in justice only and have no other covering. And he must be imagined in a state of life the opposite of the former. How would you prove this statement? If being just always make one happy and being unjust always make one miserable, prove to me that just life is still preferable and happier. Because some arguments says that if a person acts unjustly, he or she is much happier than those who act justly. Another philosophical thought is that if a person could be certain not only that an action resulting in personal benefit would not be discovered, but also that if this action were discovered, no punishing consequences would follow, then would there be any reason for that person to act morally? To further understand what we have discussed today, here are some key points for you to remember the statement between Glaucon and Adimantus. According to Glaucon, humans are selfish and unjust in nature. He told the story of the ring of Gyges to illustrate his point that justice is always self-interest. Everybody keeps up hypocrisy of praising justice because we are all afraid of suffering injustice. If you give people the power to be unjust without suffering any penalty, then they would all do it. There are three types of good, which are first, good for its own sake, B, good for its own sake and consequences, and C is consequential good.
And now, let us answer our guide question earlier. And first, what is justice and injustice based on Glaucon? Glaucon believes that everyone acts only from the motive of self-interest. Number 2, what it means to be just and unjust. It is a mean or compromise between the best of all, which is to do injustice and not be punished, and the worst of all, which is to suffer injustice without the power of retaliation. It is tolerated not as a good, but as the lesser evil, and by the reason of the inability of man to do injustice. Number 3. What are the three kinds of good by Glaucon? First, good desired for its own sake. Second, goods that is desired for their own sake and for their consequences. Third is consequential good. And that's all for our presentation in the story of the Ring of the Gyges by Plato in the Republic Book 2. We, the Group 2, Arlie Ann Tan, Maria Ezra Loy Siva, Juvie Ann Marcelana, and yours truly, Lexa Luigi Sara, will encourage you to look for our drive, to check out it for the slides, and for the copy of this video, and for the copy of the handouts. Thank you.